the fracker that's thinking? What the frack they've been drinking? Our water quality's sinking. What the fracker don't need their gas. They want to shoot us up with chemicals. I don't mean to be polemical, but shooting chemicals into rocks, is that really thinking outside the box? I know an easier way to get gas. Eat beans and kiss my asterisk. Footnote 1, it would be more fun to get your power from the sun. And we really have sinned by ignoring the wind and the waves. And then fracking in Texas, we get some of that fracking oil. They're determined to excess. It's enough to bring your blood to a boil. What the frack? We gotta foil this fracking freak show. Cut the power to the fossil fuel peak. You know what the frack are they thinking? What the frack have they been drinking? Our water quality's sinking. What the fracker don't need their gas. Farmers forced to fracking, aced out by agribiz. When you've lost your job, gotta get by, offered cash to trash your land and water. What are you gonna try? 6 figures, that's good roustabout pay. How could they harbor any doubt, you say? But the job will last 6 months or less. Then you're back where you started, but you're under duress. They leave you in the lurch, so when you go to church, speak up, don't let them run you out. Poor people have always been expendable. When the water's poison, it's not mendable. What the frack are they thinking? What the frack have they been drinking? Our water quality's sinking. What the fracker don't need their gas. Footnote 2, natural gas is mainly methane. Don't sound so friendly, more like arsenic than champagne. Your water will be so bad, polluted, sorry and sad. The tap water catches fire, it's a new stove, you should be glad. We need energy independence from Exxon, Chevron, and Shell. They need to move their offices on down to the county jail. We've got shale shot, it's a grid fuel. You know What the frack are they thinking? What the frack have they been drinking? Our water quality's sinking. What the frackity don't need their gas.
What the frack?
Frack you.
Frack me harder. Can you hear me?
I
can't hear myself.
We're coming up.
There you go. How's that?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. I think frack is going to be the second most versatile word in the English language. And if you haven't guessed by now, that's what today's show is about. Fracking. Thanks for joining us at the Scream for P show. This is Aslan, and in the studio we have Jessica and Aldada. Good morning, folks.
Good morning. I've left my consciousness at the Gary Newman concert last night.
Yeah, we have Gary Newman hangovers.
Unfortunately, that was the only hangover.
Yeah. Aslan woke up with his guy liner on. Ladies, it's a hot sight, I have to say.
Makeup for radio. So today's show is on fracking, and we've got a couple of guests calling in, and some fracking activists. And later on, I've got a little 10-minute foray into fiction land, and that is educational video that the fracking industry put out on the safety, how safe it is. And so Jessica, you know a lot about this. Why don't you explain to our listeners a little bit about what fracking is exactly? Because we hear the word a lot, but
right.
What does fracking refer to?
You know, it's really an invasive way of breaking up shale gas and getting to this, this fossil fuel for the oil industry, pretty much. And it involves injecting chemicals into the earth, deep into the earth. It's just a high intensity. It requires a lot of energy and pressure. And you guys may have heard of fracking earthquakes,
all over Oklahoma.
Yeah, it's in New York recently. I don't know if you remember, they experienced an earthquake recently, and that wasn't something that people were familiar with. They didn't have earthquakes the way we do here on our coast.
Right.
And so I mean, there's more concerns. I think the biggest concern is the water contamination, and just, again, how invasive the process is. And this is all in the name of fossil fuels, while we have this movement that's trying to implement cleaner alternatives. So yeah, I'm glad we're talking about this, and I'm glad we're going to be talking to people who are in the trenches, really trying to fight this beast of fracking.
And I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the safety of it, or exactly what it is, how complex it is. And what we're finding is, throughout the country where fracking is going on, despite the claims of the industries doing the fracking, freshwater sources are becoming highly toxic and contaminated. If you go to YouTube, you can find many examples, people of lighting their faucet water on fire. It's so toxic it actually ignites. And the stuff people are being expected not just to I think it's often easy to take for granted our access to water until it is cut off. And so today's show actually ties in with several shows we've done in the recent past, Water Wars being one of them. And one of the things that they talk about, the oil industry is not ignorant. These people aren't stupid.
Right.
They lead with false information. They know it's unsafe. And they know it's unsafe, yet still they persist. And it could possibly be that the water being contaminated is not simply a unfortunate byproduct of the fracking, but rather the deliberate poisoning of the water. What does that do? It could be a form of population control. People aren't sick. If people are sick and dying, they're generally not happy and breeding. And areas that have highly contaminated water, you experience a myriad of health problems. And one of the things about the water, water is the universal solvent, and it commingles with pretty much everything. It'll wear anything down, and once it's contaminated, it's not so easy just to remove the contaminants and say, oh, whoops, sorry about that. And we saw that earlier this year with the Elk River spill. And that in Elk River, West Virginia, a company poured thousands of gallons of toxic chemicals directly into the water supply, cutting off water to over 300,000 people. And when that happened, they actually had to call out Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, and the National Guard, because generally populations are not prepared for something like this, particularly if either access to fresh water or electricity were shut off for an extended period. And so that could happen if anywhere could happen in San Francisco. There's fracking up north here, right?
Yeah, there's fracking in Southern California, fracking in Central Valley that I'm aware of, and we might be able to get more information as to. I know in Central Valley it's been happening. And I'm not sure. I think it sounds like the interest in fracking in Southern California is more preventative, and I think we should definitely
What do you mean
ask.
by that?
Well, I think that they're exploring it. It's not. I don't think that they're actually fracking in Southern California. I could be wrong, but my understanding is in Central Valley, it's already happening. And so there's the people who live and work there are already seeing how that's affecting them. And there's been earthquakes. And, we can ask our guests more insight of that. We have somebody from Delano, California, who is involved with the Center on Race, Poverty, and the Environment, who does a lot of campaigns around environmental justice issues, and obviously fracking is one of many environmental justice issues. And then we'll have John from Earthworks, that's based actually here in the Bay Area, but they have people all over the country working on issues that pertain to mining, etc. So like I said, there's two. I've mentioned before in other radio shows that there's two shale formations that the industry really wants to exploit, and one of them is the Monterey Shale, and I believe that's the one in
Monterey.
No, it's not in Monterey. I think I get them confused. So there's the Monterey Shale, and then there's the I want to say the Santos Shale. I'm going to pull it up. But anyways, one is Southern California and the other one's Central Valley. And a lot of recent organizing and campaigning is happening around that because of the interest of this. It's kind of like what they call the frack attack, right? The industry is just going all out now that they have technology to invade the earth to that degree. So it's a huge issue. Like you said, the water contamination's huge. The earthquakes are obviously something that, is a risk to both workers and community. When you have huge facilities like that on faults, and then you're actually manufacturing earthquakes, there's even more of a risk.
Yeah, and there's a reason why the fracking, there are natural reserves around fault lines.
Right.
And so here in the United States, we have the New Madrid Fault. Have you heard of this?
No.
New Madrid.
The Leo Madrid Fault.
The New Madrid is what it's called. The New Madrid.
Runs through Mission and...
And the New Madrid Fault is in the Oklahoma area,
Okay.
And it stretches from the southern part, I think around Texas, and then diagonally heads up east. And so it is the biggest fault line around the United States outside San Andreas.
Oh, wow.
And so a lot of the fracking that's been going on lately has actually been along the fault line.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen a massive increase in earthquakes.
Yeah.
Sometimes up to 100 a day.
Wow.
And so what people, if you're out there listening and Radio Land, thanks for joining us. But one of the things people get really, when they're talking about fracking or just oil drilling in particular, it's very easy to get caught up in the details, but and opinions. But imagine what it's doing to the earth. So think about how much space 10,000 gallons, let's say, of liquid takes up. How much space is taken up by that just fluid. Even gas, it's taking up this huge cavern. So if you could take, like, let's say the inside of a small sports stadium and fill that up with chemicals or just water or any fluid, you fill up a stadium full of fluid, then that's probably, I would say, a couple 100,000 gallons of space. And hey, do we not want to cut to a song?
Yeah, we should go to music.
And so what's happening is that you have these great big giant cavernous pockets of the earth being opened up, and yeah, let's just cut to a song. we can discuss everything. Do we have our guest coming in?
Yeah, we're going to give him a call while we go to music.
Excellent. So we have some more fracking sounds, and we come back. We'll hopefully Joe from Earthworks. Is it Joe?
John.
John, sorry about that. John from Earthworks will join us, and we'll be right back.
All right.
Little fracking music to frack by. John, are you there?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Thank you for joining us here on the Scream for Peace show. And so is it Arbalez?
Yes, it's Arbalez.
Arbalez, okay, excellent.
Awesome.
It's John Arbalez.
So, John, this is DJ Aslan and Jessica. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm really glad to have you.
Thank you for having me.
And you're a Peace Corps volunteer in Ecuador. You have, it looks like, I'm looking at your profile at Earthworks. You're an activist organizer with Earthworks at earthworksaction.org. Tell us a little bit about your organization and your mission.
Sure. Earthworks has been around for about 26 years now. Our main mission is to try to bring a little bit of responsibility when it comes to energy development, to try to bring some corporate responsibility and to try to protect communities where oil and gas development is already happening and to prevent it where it's not. We hope to bring about a little bit of transparency in the industry, a little bit of transparency from the government, and like I said, to protect communities when we can.
And protect communities from what? What is actually going on? Not even in the moderate, but what is the worst that's happening out there that you see happening in California, and why do we need to keep an eye on this?
Well, there's a lot of happening in California. I don't think I can choose the worst of any of that.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
I mean, there has been development happening in California for more than 100 years. Unfortunately, the industry has been very poorly regulated until now. Our state agencies, our government agencies like to say, well, California is one of the best regulated states in the country. Well, whether that is the case or not, a lot of bad things have been happening. You know, we start with the 1969 Santa Barbara spill, And then we move on to great environmental justice issues which are occurring right now in Kern County in Central California. We have a community suffering from increased oil development and fracking here in Los Angeles. We have communities which are starting to suffer severe health impacts, not only here in Los Angeles, but all over the state. We have water contamination, we have increased or decreased air quality, throughout the state. We have a governor who is not completely protecting all Californians from the threats of oil and gas development. And we have DOGGR, the Division of Oil and Gas, Gas and Geothermal Resources, who is not completely looking into the effects, the negative effects that could come from increased oil, gas, and development and fracking here in the state of California. So it's kind of a mess right now, and we're hoping not only us but with our partner organizations to help protect some of the communities. We want to make sure that Californians are not used as guinea pigs when it comes to increased development, and we want to make sure that public health and the environment are put ahead of corporate profit.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, definitely. Thank you for your work. I'm originally from Los Angeles, from East LA particularly, but I am aware a lot of the oil industry activity. My nephew's grandparents live out in Wilmington. And so I wanted to ask more questions pertaining to Southern California.
Sure.
I know that you focus, a lot of your work is focused there, right? In Southern California?
Yes, I mean, we work all over the state, but right now one of my main projects is in Southern California to try to get the city of Los Angeles to put a de facto moratorium on this harmful practice.
So would you say the fracking industry, what the work you're doing right now is preventative, or is there actual fracking already happening?
There is unfortunately fracking already happening.
Okay.
If you take a look at our a website that we created recently, it's called shakyground.org. You can click on a link called the map, and you can. It's a great interactive map that would that the Fact Track Alliance helped us develop. You can zoom in and out. You can go to your own neighborhood. You can zoom in by county, by city, by even your own street, and see where there's active fracking and acidizing and gravel packing throughout the state. In Los Angeles County, it is very active. We have one of the largest urban oil fields in the world, which is the Inglewood oil field, which is a few miles from downtown Los Angeles. There's active gravel packing, which is a form of well stimulation happening in that field, and there's hundreds of wells there. In La Habra, in the border with Orange County, there's active fracking happening in that area as well, active underground injection. If you zoom out a little bit more, you can see active injection and fracking also happening off the coast of Long Beach, in that whole area around San Pedro. There is proposed development going to happen in Carson, which is in the southern part of Los Angeles County. There's also proposed development in Hermosa Beach, which is going to a ballot vote for voters to decide if they want it in their city. That's happening in November. There's active fracking and well stimulation happening in the mountains north of Los Angeles County near Santa Clarita. This is happening all over our county, all over Southern California. It's very disturbing once you start seeing the realities and the extent of how much it is. Some people don't realize that it's happening in their own backyard. There's an active oil well on the grounds of Beverly Hills High School.
Oh, wow.
That is hidden by a tower. And it's painted, of course, very bright colors to try to mask it, but it's there.
Well, the bright colors actually keep the pollution back.
we use a lot of sarcasm on this radio show. This is very similar to the work I've done out in Richmond. There are these crude oil tanks all over the hill. If you look at Chevron's property, and they've been painted brown, and I was told that they used to be pink, but there's a body that oversees aesthetics of projects, and they were instructed to paint the oil tanks brown so that they blend into the landscape,
Oh,
which
yeah,
they're
they do such a good job of that.
it's such an eyesore no matter what color they are.
So I'm on shakyground.org, and what it says is in California, new wastewater wells around active faults, and there are 834 wells currently within 10 miles of an active fault. And
Correct.
And could you sort of paint a picture for our listeners of what fracking actually does? Because I think a lot of people get lost in the subtleties and don't really realize what massive volumes of gas and fluid we're actually talking about, and why and how it actually impacts earthquakes.
Sure. So hydraulic fracturing is a process in which hundreds of thousands of gallons of water, along with dozens, if not hundreds, of chemicals and sand are pumped into the ground at very high pressures. What this does is it literally cracks the subsurface and allows the oil and gas to flow. Dozens of these chemicals that are being pumped into the ground are known carcinogens. They can cause birth defects. In people who've gotten close to them, they can suffer from headaches and nosebleeds. Communities where this is happening have high incidences of cancer. All these chemicals have been known to, some of them are actually listed as grave hazards by the CDC. In communities in Pennsylvania and Ohio, they have been known to contaminate groundwater. I'm sure everyone has seen the news where you can literally light your tap on fire.
Yeah, we were
That's
talking
because of all
about
the
that.
methane that it's
Wow.
yeah, that is because of all the methane that is escaping. As far as we're using hundreds of thousands of gallons of water to pump them on the ground and permanently contaminating this water, pretty much removing it from the hydrological cycle. There's no technology available to clean this water, to recycle it. This water is labeled as hazardous for even agriculture, and let alone it cannot be used for human consumption ever again. This water, what happens with this water is that it is pumped deep underground in what we call underground injection wells to dispose of it permanently.
Oh, wow.
But what happens, this water can never be seen again. It will never see the light of day. But also what happens is that when we're pumping this water and we're doing it very close to active fault lines, it has been known to trigger artificial seismic activity. This has been known since the 1960s that this can happen. In areas where where fracking has increased, and with that also underground injection, we're seeing earthquake activity increasing tenfold. States like Texas and Oklahoma, where you really don't hear of earthquakes happening, people are starting to get earthquake insurance. Just last week, Oklahoma was labeled as the second most dangerous states when it comes to seismic activity in the lower 48 states behind California.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
if this
yeah.
is happening in Oklahoma, we really don't know what could happen here in California. We're a very actively seismic state. We have thousands of fault lines that we know of, plus we don't know how many more that we just don't know about. And then, of course, we have the ones that we do know of. We have over 800 active injection wells less than 10 miles from underground from an active fault line.
And
we
those wells are not all ground based. Is that correct? Some of them are out in the water. Fracking
I'm sorry,
occurs.
can you repeat that?
Fracking also occurs offshore. Isn't that correct?
Yes, fracking occurs offshore, but there's no underground injection offshore. What happens is that they collect as much as they can from that, but anything that escapes is actually allowed to go into the ocean.
Where it does no damage at all, because the ocean's so big.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, of course, everyone is well aware that offshore we have very fragile ecosystems. Their ecosystems are of very great importance, not only for California, but to the world. And here we're dumping fracking chemicals in them. It's very scary that this is happening not only onshore, but offshore as well.
Right.
Now, if I could ask you to speculate, you've been in this game for a while, and you look at the companies. The companies are not stupid people. They know what exactly. They might play stupid in the courtroom, but they know exactly what they're doing. And these companies are obviously the biggest, wealthiest companies in the world. What is their motivation? Is it just profit? Is it just returning a shareholder maximum profit to the shareholders, or is there something else going on that maybe we're not aware of?
Right. Well, I mean, I can't fully speculate. I'm not sitting on the board or making these kinds of decisions in these companies. But when we start looking at the history of the basic economic principles of capitalism, is that the main goal is to increase profits and minimize costs. So that is probably what is happening. Like you said, they're trying to maximize profits. They're trying to return money to their shareholders. It is really interesting to see that with the amount of money that they spend on, for example, lobbying for people for the government not to regulate or to impose strict regulations, or the amount of money that they spend in court cases is incredible. With that amount of money, they could have easily met all kinds of environmental regulations, bought the best available technology. It really is strange for me to see that. Like I said, I can't speculate as to what their main reasoning is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can leave the speculation to me.
But right, I mean, unfortunately, we have seen this pattern of just irresponsible behavior.
Right.
This is not something that could be counted as corporate responsibility. We have other companies who have really taken a very positive steps to protect the environment. Unfortunately, the petroleum industry has not.
And once it's gone, though, I mean, it's very hard. Like, for example, the water. Once it's something you said earlier. Once it's contaminated, it's just not a matter of dumping some more chemicals in there to counterbalance it. It's kind of like water that's lost, and we're losing it at a staggering rate,
right.
Literally millions of gallons every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things I look at with crime is just follow the money. Who's benefiting from this? And so when we see these water areas getting contaminated, who's benefiting from that? For one thing, Coca-Cola, Nestle, the companies that make water. They don't make water. Steal water. They steal the water and sell it back to us.
Right.
And they're making huge profits from this. Like for example, I'm sure you're aware of the Elk River spill in West Virginia several months ago. And if something like that happens, then all of a sudden you just don't trust the water. Just psychologically, you're going to go to buying water.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned some severe health risks earlier, but as I said, what happens? How fragile is the California water supply? I mean, what would happen to California if something like what happened at Elk River happened to our watershed up here?
Right. Well, actually, that would be a disaster. The state of water right now in California is very fragile. Everyone is well aware that we're going through severe drought. Unfortunately, the amount of rainfall that we're getting is not enough to satisfy all the demands of the state, of the people living here, as well as the agriculture. What we have to consider is that the amount of rainfall and the amount of snowpack that we get will probably decrease in the future because of the effects of climate change. So we need to start adapting to this. We can't be removing hundreds of thousands of gallons of water from the cycle every day so we can have gasoline for our cars, or so we can increase corporate profits for the industries. We simply can't.
Right.
One of the main arguments that the industry uses is that they use a lot less water than the agriculture industry. So, however, I need to eat. We need food to eat, plus the water that is used by the agriculture industry is not permanently removed from the water cycle. We can reuse that water to, again, water our crops, or we can recycle it and make it clean enough for human consumption. This is a very outrageous argument that they use, and we need to protect what is happening, what we have here in our state. I mean, California grows over 50% of all fruits and vegetables for the entire country. Not whatever happens here in the state will reverberate throughout the country.
Yeah, not this year. We're not.
Yeah.
So
we need to protect ourselves and to protect the rest of the country. This is not just us that we're thinking about.
Exactly. Yeah.
So thinking about the end game, let's just say all the evil corporations capitulated and said, "John, what can we do for you? Just tell us what to do." And what would that be? Because from my perspective, it looks like there's no such thing as safe fracking in any sense of the word. And is the fracking itself just a shortcut to something else that's a more lengthy process, or it's the only way to get at this stuff? But I mean, would not fracking actually cause anything? What would be the effects of that, and what would you actually like to see in the industry?
Well, what I would like to see in the industry is a little bit more transparency about what is happening. One of the main things that they do is use what they call trade secrets to keep all the chemicals and all the practices that they're using a secret, because they're afraid that another company is going to come and steal their secrets. However, at the same time, they're keeping the public in the dark. Not only the public, but also the government and our regulators who are in charge of protecting us. So that's something that I would like to see from the public is a little more involvement. Like I said, sometimes a lot of people don't even know that these kinds of issues are happening in their backyard. Out of sight, out of mind. They say, well, it doesn't happen, for example, in the middle of San Francisco, in the middle of San Diego, but it's happening in Kern County. But that's far from us. But no, you need to understand that Kern County grows most of your food.
Yeah.
So anything that happens in the state affects you. Be a little more vocal. Write to the governor, write to your legislators and your assembly members and your senators and say, we need to look more into this. You say that this is a safe practice because that's what the industry and the government have been spewing at us for years. They say that it's safe, however, they haven't shown proof that it's safe. We prefer that they take the precautionary principle and prove to us it's safe before we as a public can come in and say, okay, yes, you can do this. But unfortunately, they haven't done that. They haven't taken the time to do the studies. When it comes to seismic activity, the state hasn't even looked at this. When it comes to water quality, the state hasn't even looked at this. We show them proof from other states and they say, well, that's Pennsylvania and Texas. That doesn't happen in California. We don't know that.
Yeah.
It is your responsibility. We elect you to take care of us, and you're not doing your job. So that is something that we need the public to do. Write to the governor, put pressure on them, say, you need to prove that this is safe. And there's many alternatives. California is the leading state when it comes to renewable energy. We have solar, we have wind. We can do this. We can migrate from a fossil fuel economy.
And better planning of cities, right?
Yes, urban planning.
Yeah, I just, I was thinking about it. I'm like, Southern California is like a case study, really, of how the oil industry, destroys a well-planned city with public transportation, puts in place this kind of infrastructure of sprawl where people are totally dependent and forced to buy cars and buy gasoline, right?
Yeah.
And now they're like they're going all into this it's like fracking and the tar sands, and there's no interest or care of how this is affecting people, how this is affecting the environment. So it's really, really, really important. And it's really frightening to know that a lot of this industry has gone without regulation, and that this has been happening. These chemicals are being used without our knowing, right? Until oftentimes when it's too late.
They use that phrase, freshwater.
Yeah, right.
A lot, freshwater backed. Yeah.
Yeah, I did have a question for you, John, about, I know that there was a recent mobilization in Sacramento, and I just wanted to get like a little, see what that was about. And if, I know this is an ongoing struggle and you're doing a lot of work, city by city in Southern California, getting city councils to vote for a moratorium on fracking, and definitely bringing this information to the community, who oftentimes doesn't know what's happening, as you said, in their backyard. So I just wanted to get, a little synopsis of what happened in Sacramento and what that's about.
Sure. So on March 15th, I believe the count was anywhere between 3,000 to 4,000 people showed up at the Capitol in Sacramento, pretty much to make our voices heard. We wanted to let the governor know that we don't support this practice happening in our state. We want him to use, he does have the power to use executive orders to halt this practice. And we also ask him to support SB 1132, which is a bill that was recently introduced in the state Senate by Senators Mitchell and Levine. It calls for a moratorium on fracking until we can complete a full scientific study and make sure that this practice is safe. So we had people coming from anywhere up near the Oregon border, from all the way down to San Diego. People packed in buses and were on those things for almost 10 hours to show up and make their voices heard. So this was a great mobilization, one of the largest in recent years. And what we had was people chanting. We had local indigenous communities talking about what is happening in their the reservations. We also had people from Kern County who have been affected, people who are talking in Spanish. And, these are very poor minority communities who are being affected directly and we just don't know about. So it was great to have their voices heard. We had enough people to literally surround the Capitol area and hold hands, and demand that the governor stop this harmful practice. It has been very difficult to get him to even talk about these issues. I mean, the State Democratic Party just a few weeks ago in Los Angeles approved an anti-fracking platform, despite what the governor had to say, even though he's highly opposed to it. So this is great that this movement is happening. Like I said, people from all over the state came and made their voices heard.
Awesome. Yeah.
And, unfortunately, because of what is happening in Sacramento, that the governor and the regulatory agencies are ignoring this, like you said, the local jurisdictions are taking things into their own hands. Los Angeles voting to zone out fracking from city limits. We have ballot initiatives currently, people collecting signatures in Santa Barbara, in San Benito, and in Butte County, and some other communities also looking to ban fracking, either through ballot initiatives or through putting pressure on the board of supervisors. So unfortunately, the state is not doing its job, which means the job is left up to the local communities.
Yeah.
And so when you say the state is not doing its job, is there so we've got these large corporations that are doing the fracking, tons of subcontractors that provide services, equipment, personnel, and it's a organized, it's like an underground land grab almost, kind of. But does the governing bodies, let's say the government entities that you deal with, does it even resemble that they're looking out for the best interests of the people, or is it just they're the government arm of these corporations and they're there to protect the companies? Because that's what it seems like. What is your perspective?
Right. The thing is that you have to realize when agencies like DOGR are created, their main goal is to facilitate and regulate oil and gas development in the state. To protect the people. They do so at the extent of legislation and what they can, but their main goal is for the exploitation of these resources. Unfortunately, we have not seen that they're looking to protect the public, the environment, our natural resources here in the state. They're just pretty much looking to exploit it. DOGR has not done its job. They haven't done it in the past. I mean, a couple of years ago, the director of DOGR was fired by the governor because they weren't giving out oil and gas permits fast enough.
Oh, wow.
So this is,
Yeah, who's working for who?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the governor gets millions of dollars from the industry every year. The state legislature also, the industry spent, I think, almost $50 million. Last year, they spent almost $50 million in lobbying the California legislature. That's a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
We have representatives from the Western States Petroleum Association in that Capitol building every day. We have representatives from WISPA kind of, serving on government boards. It's very disturbing that, like you said, who are they working for? Are they working to protect the people? Or are they working for the industry? Are they in our industry? We just don't know that yet. They are our elected officials. We vote for them.
Yeah, right.
Unfortunately, we can't buy elections, but we do have the power of the people.
Yeah.
We can go out there and make our voices heard.
Yeah, and we have to. We have to. That's the only way. That's the only way any change has been done. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of work, and I've done a lot of organizing around the oil industry, and there's some people that always said, it's hopeless, and we've had some really incredible victories that even people who didn't believe we could accomplish what we did actually was like, wow, we can't believe that that was successful. So I'm really glad that this is at the forefront. Because there was a time I feel like where everybody equated the whole fracking issue with the East Coast. But there's definitely been a lot more momentum recently around the fracking that's happening here and in places like Oklahoma. So
now the word fracking, I don't think has really come into common use until the last couple of years. Is this something that's been going on for 50 years and just now coming into the popular culture? Or have we seen a diminishing of, I don't know, regular oil reserves, and so they're ramping up this because another something or else is running out? Is fracking that new?
Actually, the hydraulic fracturing is not new. It has been around for several decades. But like you said, it did come into play in the last decade or so when it started really being ramped up in the Marcellus Shale in Pennsylvania, New York, Ohio, and West Virginia. Because the oil industry was started to pull out a lot of natural gas. And unfortunately, President Obama says that natural gas is our migration fuel, is our bridge fuel to move away from oil. Unfortunately, it's not. Several studies have shown that natural gas is even worse than oil in many ways, especially for climate change. Here in California, until about 2 years ago, the state had no idea that fracking was even happening. One of the organizers from the environmental organizations asked and said, "Hey, is fracking happening?" And they said, "No, we don't. It doesn't happen here at all." 6 months later, they changed their tune and said, "Yes, it's happening. We just don't know where it's happening."
Wow.
And then, less than a year later, we have regulations to try to permit this and try to find out a little more about it.
So are you saying
so
that?
In California,
I'm sorry. Are you saying that these companies actually started wells up, and at the time there was not even a permit required? They just had to own the land and they could do whatever they wanted with it?
yes, actually, the regulations for companies to get permits to frack and to acidize and to gravel pack and all those unconventional well stimulation practices just took effect on January 1st of this year. So for about 4 months, we have required permits. Before then, like you said, they could come in and do whatever they wanted. So if people get a chance, visit the Dogger website. You can look up the permits that are being issued. About 80% of the permits that are being issued right now to frack are in Kern County, unfortunately. But there are some other areas where they're permitting, and these permits have to be in 30 days before the frack job begins. So you can see if there's a fracking job going to start near your neighborhood or near where you live. Unfortunately, there's no way to appeal these permits. And once the state approves them, that's it. There's no way for the public to have any of them.
Repeat that term again. You said Dogger, or what is it?
Yeah, the Dogger website.
Oh, okay. So it's Dogger?
R.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's the Dogger.
Oh, okay. I see. Dogger. It's Dogger. Got it. Found it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So you can find all the permits that have been applied for or issued since January in that website. Of course, there's more coming in every day.
Yeah, right.
One of the biggest things is that the industry is currently complaining that the permitting is just too cumbersome for them. For example,
jeez.
Like Baker Hughes, about 2 weeks ago, said that they're having to lay off staff in Kern County because the permitting is just too cumbersome for them.
So they can build these giant wells, drilled miles and miles into the earth with very complex engineering machinery, but the paperwork is too much.
Yeah, exactly.
That's their excuse.
You're good at summarizing. Yeah, that's crazy.
If that paperwork is too much, do we really want to trust them with toxic chemicals?
No kidding.
What the frack?
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, that unfortunately has been something that has happened for the last couple of years. The oil industry has been saying, trust us. You know, we know what we're doing. Unfortunately, we don't trust them. We don't trust that they can protect us. We don't trust that they can protect the environment from contamination.
and when have
I
they
mean,
ever
I
come
personally
through?
don't. I don't know about you guys.
You say that again?
I don't personally trust the oil industry. I don't know if you guys trust them.
No, not at all. Like I was saying, like when have they ever come through and like surprised us in a good way? They've had this super secret, environmental cleanup program that they're pumping in hundreds of millions of dollars to. That doesn't happen. There's the only surprises you ever actually hear about are the bad ones, and that's what they're continuously trying to cover up. And I think if people really understood the depths of the corruption that was going on at the expense of our health, our water supply, our food supply, people would be up in arms, literally. That's why they spend $50 million a year convincing people that what's happening to them right to their face isn't really happening, and it's nothing to be concerned about.
Exactly. I mean, well, look, that's why we ask people to go and educate themselves. Go to our website, go to earthworksaction.org. Visit your favorite environmental organization's website. Everyone has information on fracking. Please educate yourselves. Like you said, the industry spends millions, actually billions of dollars trying to pass along this misinformation. If you look at their marketing website, which is called Energy in Depth, they have just tons of misinformation on that website. Their main marketing strategist and person who works for them in California used to work for the tobacco industry.
Of course.
He used to sell, cigarettes to kids and to minorities, and now he's here peddling fracking to us. What kind of trust can we put in that?
Yeah, no kidding. A lot of the same chemicals from cigarette smoke is a lot of the same stuff you would get from an oil refinery.
Really?
Isn't that crazy?
Not surprising at
Yeah,
all.
not surprising. So he does work for the same industry. He stays within that industry.
Well, hey, John, thanks for joining us. We're going to move along now. Any last words to our listeners before you leave us?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the chance to talk about these issues. And like I just said, please go out there and educate yourselves. Visit our website. All my information's in there. Give me a call. Shoot me an email. We would love to talk more about this. If you want to get involved, please contact us. Please get involved through us or through your favorite environmental organization. This is a very important issue that people need to know about.
Earthworksaction.org. Thank you so much, John, for being on.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right. Peace.
Peace out.
And we're at war. There's always a war.
What the frack?
What the frack? And that is a good point, though, that a lot of people in the United States don't really understand the nature of war. In the fact that we're at war now. I think in the year 3000, they're going to look back at the World War III and say it began in 2001. Whenever there's a war on the front lines, and there's also a home front, and that's the war for the minds. And we see that in the United States going on right now. But there's a global war, and it's a class war, where the people that are part of the ruling class, they don't really care about us. They think of us more as cattle than human beings. And they don't care if you're black, white, what religion you are. You can be Christian, Muslim, Jewish, none of that matters. You know, what matters is power, control. And so we have a little, you often hear the word lobbying and stuff going around. And we're going to play a little video coming up right now. And this is industry propaganda, basically. And it's a little 10-minute video on how fracking works. But listen to the intricacies, listen to the subtleties where they slip in how safe it is. They continuously use the word freshwater. And they are presenting theories and suppositions and really just nothing more than wishful thinking to fact. And particularly when they talk about the safety. So let's go ahead and start that. And when we come back, we should have on the phone a guest, Lupe Martinez. And we'll see you in a minute. As soon as it loads up. Do we have it? We might have a little internet glitch going on. But as soon as this loads up, and that is one of the things that they'll spend tons and tons of money on is disinformation. Why? Because they can never admit guilt. Once they admit the guilt, then it's all downhill from there. So they have to continuously reinforce. What's the bad thing about telling a lie? You've all got to tell another lie to cover it up, and another lie to cover that up. And
the truth is cut and dried, right? Except the truth is cut and dried.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you tell the truth,
there's no going back.
No going back.
But people would much rather hear a comfortable lie than an uncomfortable truth.
Yeah.
And one of the things that people are obsessed with, you hear this all the time, is, well, the government would never do that, or they would tell us.
Oh yeah, I've had people say, "Well,
or the media would have found out."
I really trust that our representatives will take care of the situation. You know, I have all my faith in
the elected officials.
I'm just kind of like on the other side. I'm just like, what? Do you have any idea what is happening?
That's the deck is stacked. And it's stacked against us.
No.
And this false thing that we have called democracy, in theory, it seems to work because you think, oh, well, we have a vote and you can vote for your people. And then what those people do is have the misperception that they are there to represent the people. They are not there to represent the people. We're
brainwashed.
In theory, they are, but in theory only.
Yeah.
Because what has happened, one of the shortfalls of democracy is, at its fundamental core, it basically comes down to the mob rules. 50% plus one, whoever's in the majority rules. Mm-hmm. So if you can ensure that you are always in the majority, then guess what? It's not a democracy. If it's one team pads all the players, everybody that you're voting from already represents the ruling elite, then it's a no-win game. You can't win that game. Can't. It's not possible to win that game. It's not even really possible. You've got to do a lot just to play, just to actually show up and get in. And the government, if you're a real enemy of the government, you know what they do to you?
What do they do to you?
They kill you. Mm. And so we have an organization.
We're not enemy enough, I guess.
Not yet. If you hear my early demise, you know, I struck a chord with somebody. But it is far more sinister than anybody than you could really possibly imagine. No matter how conspiratorially minded, no matter how much you distrust the government, what is actually going on is so far beyond the scope of comprehension. It would probably, if people really en masse found out, they would just come. It would be toxic culture shock. So we're going to listen to this, and it's about 6 minutes. This is development of oil and natural gas from shale.
Geologists have known for years that substantial deposits of oil and natural gas are trapped in deep shale formations. These shale reservoirs were created tens of millions of years ago. Around the world today, with modern horizontal drilling techniques and hydraulic fracturing, the trapped oil and natural gas in these shale reservoirs is being safely and efficiently produced, gathered, and distributed to customers. Let's look at the drilling and completion process of a typical oil and natural gas well. Shale reservoirs are usually 1 mile or more below the surface, well below any underground source of drinking water, which is typically no more than 300 to 1,000 feet below the surface. Additionally, steel pipes, called casing, cemented in place, provide a multi-layered barrier to protect freshwater aquifers. During the past 60 years, the oil and gas industry has conducted fracture stimulations in over 1 million wells worldwide. The initial steps are the same as for any conventional well. A hole is drilled straight down using freshwater-based fluids, which cools the drill bit, carries the rock cuttings back to the surface, and stabilizes the wall of the well bore. Once the hole extends below the deepest freshwater aquifer, the drill pipe is removed and replaced with steel pipe, called surface casing. Next, cement is pumped down the casing. When it reaches the bottom, it is pumped down and then back up between the casing and the borehole wall, creating an impermeable additional protective barrier between the well bore and any freshwater sources. In some cases, depending on the geology of the area and the depth of the well, additional casing sections may be run and, like surface casing, are then cemented in place to ensure no movement of fluids or gas between those layers and the groundwater sources. What makes drilling for hydrocarbons in a shale formation unique is the necessity to drill horizontally. Vertical drilling continues to a depth called the kickoff point. This is where the wellbore begins curving to become horizontal. One of the advantages of horizontal drilling is that it's possible to drill several wells from only one drilling pad, minimizing the impact to the surface environment. When the targeted distance is reached, the drill pipe is removed, and additional steel casing is inserted through the full length of the wellbore. Once again, the casing is cemented in place. For some horizontal developments, new technology in the form of sliding sleeves and mechanical isolation devices replace cement in the creation of isolations along the wellbore. Once the drilling is finished and the final casing has been installed, the drilling rig is removed and preparations are made for the next steps, well completion. The first step in completing a well is the creation of a connection between the final casing and the reservoir rock. This consists of lowering a specialized tool called a perforating gun, which is equipped with shaped explosive charges, down to the rock layer containing oil or natural gas. This perforating gun is then fired, which creates holes through the casing, cement, and into the target rock. These perforating holes connect the reservoir and the wellbore. Since these perforations are only a few inches long and are performed more than a mile underground, the entire process is imperceptible on the surface. The perforation gun is then removed in preparation for the next step, hydraulic fracturing. The process consists of pumping a mixture of mostly water and sand, plus a few chemicals, under controlled conditions into deep underground reservoir formations. The chemicals are generally for lubrication, to keep bacteria from forming, and help carry the sand. These chemicals typically range in concentrations from 0.1 to 0.5% by volume, and help to improve the performance of the stimulation. This stimulation fluid is sent to trucks that pump the fluid into the wellbore and out through the perforations that were noted earlier. This process creates fractures in the oil and gas reservoir rock. The sand in the frac fluid remains in these fractures in the rock and keeps them open when the pump pressure is relieved. This allows the previously trapped oil or natural gas to flow to the wellbore more easily. This initial stimulation segment is then isolated with a specially designed plug, and the perforating guns are used to perforate the next stage. This stage is then hydraulically fractured in the same manner. This process is repeated along the entire horizontal section of the well, which can extend several miles. Once the stimulation is complete, the isolation plugs are drilled out and production begins. Initially water and then natural gas or oil flows into the horizontal casing and up the wellbore. In the course of initial production of the well, approximately 15 to 50% of the fracturing fluid is recovered. This fluid is either recycled to be used on other fracturing operations or safely disposed of according to government regulations. The whole process of developing a well typically takes from 3 to 5 months. A few weeks to prepare the site, 4 to 6 weeks to drill the well, and then 1 to 3 months of completion activities, which includes 1 to 7 days of stimulation. But this 3 to 5 month investment can result in a well that will produce oil or natural gas for 20 to 40 years or more. When all of the oil or natural gas that can be recovered economically from a reservoir has been produced, work begins to return the land to the way it was before the drilling operations commenced. Wells will be filled with cement and pipes cut off 3 to 6 feet below ground level. All surface equipment will be removed, and all pads will be filled in with dirt or replanted. The land can then be used again by the landowner for other activities, and there will be virtually no visual signs that a well was once there. Today, hydraulic fracturing has become an increasingly important technique for producing oil and natural gas in places where the hydrocarbons were previously inaccessible. Technology will continue to be developed to improve the safe and economic development of oil and gas resources.
Propaganda at its finest.
It's versed by the devil.
I wouldn't even know where to start on that. So much disinfo. I did like it. They said it's 95% sand and water and a few chemicals.
Yeah.
So do we have Mr. Martinez?
Yeah, Lupe, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Mm-hmm.
Oh, excellent. Mr. Martinez, thank you for joining us. And you are joining us from the Center on Race, Poverty, and the Environment. And we're here today talking about fracking. And so thank you for joining us. And could you tell us a little bit about your organization and your background?
Sure. I'm Lupe Martinez. I'm the Assistant Executive Director. We're Center on Race, Poverty, and the Environment, as you just mentioned right now. We're here in the Central Valley. Actually, we're in Veleno. And our organization, of course, an EJ organization, and we have been working also on the fracking lately, and specifically around Kern County pretty heavily because of the boom that they're claiming, the oil boom around Shafter, this whole area. And one of our issues that we have is that they're doing the fracking right around a community garden that we have in Shafter at this point. So we've been pretty active on the fracking. S.C.R.E.A.M does a lot of work within the rural communities in this area, both in Kern and Tulare County. Of course, we're working on different things, but one of the main things that we've been, more than anything else, is sustainable ag, and also looking at community gardens and how our food system is set up and so on. So the whole thing on fracking, of course, is really touching home real close when you're only about, 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet away from the community garden that we have in Shafter. My background, as I've pretty much all my life, was a farm worker, had an opportunity to join Cesar Chavez back in those days, and did spend a lot of time with the UFW, working as an organizer, labor organizer, and also working not just in organizing, but also looking at all of the stuff that we were back then, trying to fight DDT, all the other chemicals that have always been an issue.
So a lot of those campaigns in the past have also been EJ, as you call them, which is a environmental justice issue, right?
Which is very interesting, very true, because even though we didn't call it EJ, we didn't know the words or so on at that point. What we didn't know, and which was one of our big issues, of course, was, that we started to see our communities develop the cancer cluster of children. And so we started to see all of that. Then Cesar said, look, if we're going to try and get contracts for farm workers, and this is what we're doing, then we're not gonna be able to be happy with those contracts if we don't take care of the main issue, which is the chemicals or the pesticides that are killing our people and killing our children in this community. And so as a result, even though it was a farm worker movement, it became an issue of what's on our food. the residues in our food. And so, so we didn't know the words back then, but yes, we were, Cesar was a big environmentalist back then, and we just didn't name it that, but that's really what he was.
Yeah.
But that's the time that we went on the boycott took off, the great boycott, but it was in not only on the labor issues, but trying to get rid of the worst chemicals that were being used at that time. And of course, one of the bigger ones was DDT. And so that was one of the things. But yeah, very true.
And
very
we
true.
do see...
So it's all connected.
It's all connected, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. We do see... I'm probably... You're probably more aware of it than the average person, but how is fracking affecting our food supply now in California?
Well, the way that we're seeing the fracking at this point is, well, there's a couple of things. There's a whole bunch of things, I'm sorry. When we talk about, and everybody's talking about the drought in California, and so if we have a drought, then how can we be using 1.5 million gallons of water to drill these wells?
Good point.
That's why we have a drought.
Exactly. I mean, and we're taking this water out of the ground, to put back in the ground. And so we already have a lot of contamination as it is. So we don't know, and nobody can really tell us, what chemicals they're really using. Trade secret, right? And so we don't know where that waste is now going. I mean, they're going to pull it out, supposedly. There isn't going to be any chemicals in the ground. At least that's what we keep hearing. But, I mean, who knows the reality of that? So the water is a big issue, and especially here in the Central Valley, when you look at the Westlands and so on, that's a huge issue. So I don't understand how the growers themselves are not fighting even harder, or the farmers are not even fighting harder on this in resisting, knowing that they're the ones who are also going to be impacted, and the impact then goes to the farm worker, and it goes all the way down to all of the chain of command and how it all happens. So it's a big problem on the water. The other thing, of course, is we don't know what impact it's going to. I mean, it's not like we're not in the San Andreas Fault and all of this. So what is it going to do as far as earthquakes down the line?
Yeah.
We don't know that. I mean, when we're hearing things in LA and what's happening with the earthquakes, but in reality, I mean, I'm a dumb farm worker. I'm a farm worker all my life. I've been an organizer. I'm a farm worker. I'm not a scientist, but common sense tells me you start breaking something, by God, something's going to give. Right. Something's going to happen somewhere.
How could it not?
It's just common sense.
Yeah, exactly. Have you experienced earthquakes out there in Delano where you are, Lupe?
Well, there is some very small, but they're saying that there is some activity happening.
Yeah.
And so it is starting to happen. So it's just it's going to be a matter of time. I mean, there's no guarantees of what they're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, they keep telling us, when we take our folks and we, we're doing everything that we're doing to resist and fight it. They keep telling us, no, it's safe. No, they don't know.
Right.
And they never have been able to really say
They
that.
hope it's safe.
Yeah, one thing about, I'm did some organizing out in Central Valley, and the first thing that comes to mind is the lack of access to clean and affordable or free water in communities like where you're from, and in the other surrounding rural communities. And we're talking about an industry that is taking what very little water is left from your community to use it in the industry and pretty much contaminate it. And I feel for the people out there, because I know that you guys probably pay the most for potable water than anybody else in the rest of the state of California, because of the fact that a lot of your water is already contaminated. And I know that there's some small communities that have to have like special tanks of water, right?
Very true. Very true. Well, the issue that we have with the contamination of the water, the biggest ones right now is arsenic, nitrates, and we can go down the line. And it's every community pretty much here in the Central Valley.
Yeah.
I mean, it's rare where there's a couple of wells here and there that are clean or levels below the standards of the EPA on the arsenic and so on. But just as an example, here in Delano, the city, of course, was trying to bring the levels down on the arsenic, and so they had to borrow $21 million to get rid of the arsenic, only to turn around right now, and now it's another issue is how are you going to bring the nitrates down on that? So now I don't know how many more millions in order to take care of that issue, and if they can take care of it. They drilled some new wells. They put in some treatment plants, and so our water is contaminated. So we already are right now at this moment we're paying about $102 for the water. Plus, I have to spend another $100, to buy bottled water because we're not drinking that water from the tap. And so when you look at the amount, we are paying the highest, and it's not over because that $21 million here in Delano, and I'm not even talking about Chapter and Wasco, but just Delano. Not only that, we're paying $100 right now. They're going to increase the rate for the next 5 years, and so we're going to end up in about 5 years at about $160 a month, to take care of the problem with the arsenic. And then to top it off, there's an issue with the nitrates, and that they're very high. So that's another big amount of money that we're going to have to fork out. And who does that? I mean, it's not the city. I mean, it's the taxpayers, and it's us who have to pay for it. But it's a big problem. And so when they're talking about taking all this water and using it, in an industry that is not even sure, what impact, and maybe they do know the impact. Maybe they just don't tell us.
They know. They know.
They know, and they don't tell us. And so down the road, they'll just say, "Oops, guess what? We weren't." We were not correct. I mean,
plausible deniability.
I'm sorry. And they always want to say, "I'm sorry." That doesn't get us anywhere.
After your children are dead and diseased, and because the water, I mean, you can buy bottled water, but I mean, what about washing your clothes, taking a bath?
Yeah.
It's impossible not to get that absorbed into your body somehow.
Yeah, exactly.
And and then the food supply. What are you going to do for the water there? And
right.
In the fracking, what can people do if they want to start fracking, or is it just a lost cause, or are we just going to capitulate to the because so far since I've been following this, I have not found one instance of really the oil industry backing down and it becoming safer in any manner at all. Have there been any big victories out there?
I think the victories are in the works.
Yeah.
I wanted to get from you, Lupe. I know that you were a part of that huge mobilization that just happened in Sacramento around this, because I know your organization, other organizations have really been informing the public and mobilizing the public to demand a moratorium on fracking and some more transparency. And I wanted to get kind of an update from you. I know you were a part of that. You were the MC of that action. So you want to talk a little bit about that? So we can get to the victories.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm having a little hard time being able to hear.
Oh, so, okay.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. Definitely in Sacramento was fantastic. So many people from around the state come together to Sacramento to bring this message to the governor. Even though, of course, he wasn't there, but I'm sure he saw everything that happened and was totally aware of. Certainly, Californians against fracking, and everybody that's involved. We're all being impacted in California in different areas, of course. In Los Angeles, the things that are happening there in LA. With the fracking, the schools being so close. I mean, there's just so many issues that we're seeing. So to see, close to 5,000 people come together in one voice in unity, and that's what we're going to have to continue to do, is to get the message out on this fracking, and also uniting the communities in order to be able to make that change, and to get the fracking, or the oil industry, I should say, more in tune with the regulations that we don't have. I mean, because we really don't have any regulations. I mean, I know that they tell us, that there's Stogger, that there's all these other things, but come on. I mean, what, they're not policing it. They're not monitoring the way that it should. They tell us they do, but we don't believe that. And so, which regulations do we have that will protect us? A couple of things that I've learned with S.C.R.E.A.M from Luke Cole, who was our founder, was that there's this whole myth that the government is going to protect us. That this is one of the things that we need an attorney in order to be able to win all the fights. What we really need is the unity and the power of the people in order to make the changes. Because if government was really there to protect us, we wouldn't be having to do all of this right now.
Right.
We wouldn't have to. I mean, we would depend on them. But why can't we depend? And so many laws that there is, for all of the contaminations, to protect the communities, to make sure. Why do we still have all these problems? I mean, you name it, from air to water to fracking, and we still don't have that protection that we are supposed to have, and we're assured that we're supposed to have. So our thing on in Sacramento is what we have to, even, if this is 5,000, at some point we need to figure out how we get 100,000. Let me tell you a story very quickly. When the UFW, with the farm worker movement, started, it started off here in Delano with actually about 1,200, 1,500 workers, Filipino workers, coming out and doing the strike. Out of those 1,500, it became a movement of 17 million people throughout the nation, Canada and Mexico, supporting that great boycott. I'm not saying that we should shoot for 17 million, but certainly we need to have a strong power of the people in unity and support, and to understand how this is impacting our lives. And that's the thing that we're going to have to really move on, and to get that message and educate, our folks in every community that's possible that we can.
Yep. And I think you just hit the nail on the head, so to speak, in the sense that boycotting in the past has been effective. And if we look throughout history, that's probably the only thing that is effective, because what does boycotting do? That hits them in the area they're only concerned about. It's the only area they're concerned about, and that is the bottom line. Right. I personally think there needs to be organized boycotting of everything, because in many ways we're empowering. And I hear this a lot from activists. They're like, the evil corporations, they're terrible, blah, blah, blah. And then you look in the refrigerator and it's packed full of all the crap that these evil corporations are making.
Right.
And so we are empowering our own.
Friends don't let friends eat at McDonald's. That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay.
And because there's this false misunderstanding that we were talking about this earlier, that we live in a democracy where because of the inherent nature that we're voting for these people, that we are their first and foremost priority. And that is just not the case at all. It's an uphill battle just to meet somebody who's interested in actually representing the people. What we see is, for the last 100 years, is the migration from what is a theoretical democratic society, but the word democracy is thrown around quite a bit, and the governing bodies will use this as a weapon, saying, "Hey, we live in a democracy. It's not perfect, but at least you have a vote. At least you have a say." When really you don't. When I say you, I mean
Right.
just we the people. And the word democracy itself did not appear in either the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution. And so when I see these really, good people out there fighting the fight for democracy, often it seems like they're leading themselves to the slaughter, because all they want to do is vote for the system. When you vote into the system, you're supporting it in some ways. Not that we have a choice at this point, but to me, back to the boycotting, if you look at the fall of Rome, it did not fall due to a superior military force or political action or any of that. It fell because basically their supply lines were attacked. And when we're talking about companies, these big multinational corporations, or just your mom and pop shop, the supply line is customers and revenue. And really, I think, is there any place that could be boycott? I mean, if you wanted to run a boycott on the fracking industry, what would be boycotted? Would it be oil? Would it be the company's other products?
Well, there's different ways, and I think there has to be a strategy thought out. But I mean, certainly there's different ways. I mean, I think we can look at the oil in itself, or the companies or the corporations. I mean, let's face it. I mean, when companies like Exxon, Chevron, all these other companies start feeling the heat and the loss of their how much profit goes to their shareholders, I mean, then they start looking and changing their ways. So I think there's different avenues that we can do, and I think we need to come together to figure out that piece of how do we move, and making sure that we move them for them to start really doing what needs to be done here, and that is, of course, making sure that we are protected, that our land is protected, that our people are protected, our children are protected. And so we have to look at that. I mean, there's so many issues, that we have. I mean, when we're talking about water, we're talking about wastewater, we're talking about, the earthquakes. I mean, there's so many things, but we have to educate. We have to educate our communities, and it has to be the power of the people in order to make those changes. And one of the things, when I was mentioning right now about the 17 million people that supported the Great Boycott back then, their way of support was by voting of not buying the grape. And that did it. That put so much pressure on the corporations here in the valley that then they decided that it was not worth continuing, but it was worth signing those contracts, those first contracts with the farm workers. We have to do the same thing. I mean, and these are huge corporations. They don't like the negativity. They don't like to be exposed. And so there's a lot of other things that we are going to have to figure out how is the best way to move those big pieces. Doesn't mean that we don't do the local. I mean, we've got to do the local because we're impacted immediately right there. So we have to figure that piece out too. Because the other piece is that the politicians, and in talking to some politicians, they don't believe it. They believe that it's not, it's good for the whole country, because it's not just for the state, but it's for the country. I mean, what they're talking about, oil production here in Shafter in Kern County, it is bigger than any other place that we know of at this point, what we hear. So they don't want to admit, all of these impacts, and they don't want to do that. So I think we have to start, hitting it from different sides.
Yeah.
If a politician doesn't understand it, then it's time for that politician to, vacate that seat.
Right.
And that person is not going to vacate it just by voluntarily.
Oh, he's paid to be there. He or she is paid to be
You
there.
gotta knock him over and pull that chair.
But we have heard recently how difficult Congress people are finding it to get by on their salary. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So what can let's say the people are aware, somebody finds themselves, okay, I'm aware, what can I do besides vote? What can somebody actually do to get involved? Is there something that, or should there be an organized boycott going on of some product within this industry? Again, what would that be? You can't really boycott gasoline.
Well, the gasoline, but there's so many other products that are, coming out of the oil base. It's not just the gasoline. There's all kinds of other things, all kinds of other products that are put out there that we should start thinking of. And we're not going to be able to boycott every single product.
Well, what would be one we could? What would be one?
Well, certainly, I think that, we have to start, and I'm somewhat biased here because I'm thinking about agriculture in the community gardens and the cooperatives that we're looking at. But certainly, I think we need to start thinking about, the pesticides that these corporations also produce, and maybe it's about pesticides and getting rid of those, which will also help us to clean up on the contamination, making sure that we have healthy foods that are not, with residue or pesticide residues. So I think we can start looking at pesticides, which is probably one of the bigger ones that will help us all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's more discussion, or has to be more discussion in figuring out, who do we target? Because let me go back to my experience with the boycott and the grape is it was targeted, to go after the table grape, not every single grape, but the table grape. Why? Because that was one of the bigger ones. That was one of that target was so much where it was
strategic, right? It was strategic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
And so we have to be strategic about this, yeah.
We have to be strategic about it. But I think the first thing, the biggest step right now is educating everybody. A lot of folks are not aware of the impact or what it is. And they hear one side. Oh, don't worry about it. We've been doing it for 60 years or 80 years, and this is nothing different than we've been doing. It is different. It's not the same thing anymore. Not the same thing as chemicals, not the same thing of how they're drilling, whether it's up or down or sideways or how they're doing all of this stuff. So there's been a lot of changes, and folks, our communities don't know that. And we need to start educating ourselves on what that is and why. And it's not an easy thing. It's very difficult. But we also have already some examples of the impacts that are happening, in other states. So we should look at those and see how best we can get it out there to folks. Here's my what we're trying to do as far as C.R.E.A.M. Within our communities, farm workers. Not all the time are we listening to the news and so on. So we have to look at other ways of how we get that message out to people who don't even speak English or don't speak English, who are part of this, who are part of this whole impact. Everybody's involved in this. Or has to be involved in this. So we have to look at those other pieces in itself. Our lives are they're so busy. We've had so many things running in our lives, but we have to educate ourselves that we need to put some time aside in order to understand, where our priorities are. And I think once we understand where our priorities are, and it's about, our health and our children's health, then we can start making the changes necessary.
Exactly.
So to say, we're gonna boycott gasoline, something to that effect, we know it hasn't happened, and that's been tried before. So we need to look for that one target that is strategic, and then what percentage do you need in order for it to, come to its knees?
Yeah.
And it doesn't take much. I mean, we knew in the Great Boycott, we knew that the percentage that we needed was less than 5%, and it would start hurting them.
And it did.
And it did.
It did.
And it did. Yeah. So it's not a huge number. I mean, it really isn't. But to get that wheel rolling in that direction takes a lot of time.
And we need that one thing.
Yeah.
I think that's something that's really easy that people can. Oh, I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
I can do that.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Buy something. Buy this instead of that.
Exactly. And something that's very common, right? I mean, something that everybody uses or exactly. That's what we have to look at. So
Lupe, what you said earlier about creating cooperatives and you're teaching people how to grow food locally, you know, that right there is a boycott of the industrial stuff.
Yeah.
So really,
I'm not going to get into it because we just did a conference with California for Pesticide Reforms it's a coalition, of course, but we're into the whole thing on sustainable ag, and we are talking about a shift in paradigm in our food system and so on.
Yeah, it would actually make a huge difference if everybody in their own home grew at least one edible plant, you know, have some kind of home garden with one edible plant and some rosemary, some spice.
Yes.
And or herbs.
Or herbs, yes.
And if everybody did that, it would have a huge impact, though, on the industry, because they really do have a stranglehold on our culture by controlling the food supply.
Yeah.
And the prices and all that. And we're going to see a massive increase in prices after this. You know, thousands of acres of land are not getting planted this spring.
Yeah.
And so
but
there's going to be a lot of land this year because of the drought that's not going to be planted, especially around the Huron area, all that area there, the Westlands, because of the drought, because there's no water. And so it is going to be a huge issue. Mm-hmm. But I think in what we're looking at is how do we, because we already have in different communities, in Arvin, Chapter, Greenfield, we're getting some more land in Wasco. And so we're already moving in that direction, and we have had some successes the last couple of years now. So we're moving in that direction. But our next phase is moving into now community cooperatives, food cooperatives, and so that's our next phase, and we've already started the trainings on that.
Awesome.
And people and our folks are really, I mean, they're very interested in it, and I think we need to start shifting on that. And why shouldn't we have our cooperatives? Why shouldn't we, work together? And it is possible. I mean, and when we look around the world, in other areas, it's happening already. So we should be able to do the same thing. That will certainly have an impact, and especially if we don't use chemicals and pesticides and so on. That's going to have an impact in these corporations who are, flooding us and killing us as it is right now.
Yeah. Actually, now in some areas of the country, you're considered an environmental extremist if you want to plant an organic garden. Just a garden.
I'm just a farmer, sir.
Well, hey, we have to move on. I want to thank you very much, Mr. Martinez, for joining us. It's been very informative, and you are from the Center on Race, Poverty, and the Environment. People can find you at CRPE-EG.org. We'll also have links on our blog after the podcast. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Lupe.
Thank you so much, and I felt very comfortable. Thank you so much.
Sí se puede.
Sí se puede, desde luego.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Adiós. Bye-bye.
It's like boiling water, just to tug on the steam, running in the race, just to run from a dream. We'll be burning our chairs just to keep from the cold, drilling a hole, just searching for hell, raking Satan's red turn to ash while pockets turn to gold. It's like somebody took a knife to your chest, filled a vessel with your blood, and decided to test how much money can you make killing someone in this blood on our hand, place of water that run. In this blood on our hand, place of water that run. How much money can you make from killing someone?
Look up in the sky, pattern lines, milky white. Barium, strontium, aluminum oxide. Alzheimer's, autism, asthma falling from the sky. Watch and see, think about it, realize. Look up, look out, and share. Risk because you dare to care, you dare to care, you dare to care. Fracking GMO, geoengineering. People sit in disbelief of all that they are hearing. Look up, look out, and share. Risk because you dare to care, you dare to care, you dare to care. Trees, bees, animals, everyone needs clean water, needs the sun. Idiots are causing problems, fear, disease, and drought. Everyone must learn about fracking GMO, geoengineering. The people sit in disbelief, all that they are hearing. Look up, look out, and share. Risk because you dare to care, you dare to care, you dare to care. All because I want organic, I'm elite and rude. They are messing with the weather, messing with the food, messing with the planet, messing with my mind. Just say no, no more, not this time. Fracking GMO, geoengineering. Try to control the things that we are hearing. Look up, look out, and share. Risk because you dare to care, you dare to care, you dare to care. Look up, look out, and share the word until everyone knows everything and everything is heard. Post to Facebook fans, you then start on Google Plus. Whisper with great passion, they are killing us. Look up, look out, and share. Risk because you dare to care, you dare to care, you dare to care.
And we're back.
And just a little friendly reminder that the enemy is within.
Oh, we can hear him in the background.
That's part of it.
Here comes the enemy.
Yeah. So thanks everybody for joining us. This has been 2 hours of Fracking Frack. There's the first time I actually really heard the word fracking, it was
Seriously,
just
they're
gonna
coming
enjoy
for
it.
you.
The enemy is coming for us.
They're coming really
They
close.
heard us. They heard we're the environmental terrorists by spreading information.
I've been called an eco-terrorist.
Have you?
Yeah, and people that I associate with were called eco-terrorists.
And that is for just talking. Just basically talking and using words. You know, you can't That's a radical notion sometimes. Most people talk without actually saying anything. And which is why we record the Scream for P show. And you can find all of our recordings, over 100 podcasts, at screamforpeace.net/archive. And at Radio Valencia as well, along with a myriad of other shows. And if this is your first time joining us, thanks. And the show is actually about the nature of reality, the convergence of philosophy, art, and science. And what we do is explore some of the under currents of culture. You had something?
Oh, and your consciousness shall expand.
And that's actually, if you think about energy and the acquisition of knowledge, if energy is knowledge, knowledge is energy, then the more you know, the more your consciousness expands. But even if you fill up your head with false information, there's still going to be an expansion going on. But it's an ever-evolving process. And so the music on the show, we invite you to re-listen to the program or look up some of the words, because the music that we select is specifically about the topic we're talking about. And therefore, within the song lyrics, you'll find truisms that reflect what we consider a collective conscious. And we kind of got fracked last night. We only got a couple of minutes left, but at the Gary Newman concert, the douchebags that were like jumping around, screaming, yelling,
trying to start a mosh pit.
Yeah, it was really completely inappropriate.
I knew there was going to be one. The music.
It wasn't a mosh pit. Those guys did not fit in. Those guys were. What happened here was, I see it as a deliberate attempt to disrupt the concert. There was all these guys at the front of the concert jumping up and down, screaming. They obviously did not, they seemed to know the words and stuff, but they were not part of the scene. And they all had uniform short haircuts like law enforcement. And if you've ever heard of an organization called InfraGard, this is one of the things. It's kind of like Community Watch. And but I noticed they all had the short haircuts. They had that military demeanor, like they were law enforcement. And then afterwards, the same people that were causing a disturbance to everybody that was there, anybody who was there felt it. Particularly at the front. In the back, I saw them retrieving the personal items from like the security doors from behind, so they were like part of the house somehow.
Weird.
And
I got tossed around a couple of times.
Yeah. They were obnoxious.
And I was dancing with them. I just like, they gave me room to like.
You blended in pretty well.
Like I ruined my concert, dude.
It was fun at first, and then that guy got crazy.
Yeah. Feeling my elbows.
And you have to understand, a lot of people in the audience. I mean, we're pretty old now, and there were people older than me, and it's, we can't do that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not showing any signs of slowing down.
I saw a young girl actually ate it right behind you.
Oh yes, I heard. I was like, maybe I'm too busy enjoying.
But it was a great concert despite the disturbances.
Yeah.
Just a flawless performance.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah. And that was the last night of his U.S. tour. It's off, I think, to New Zealand, Australia, the time frame next. So if you didn't get to see him, tough luck. Maybe next time around, if they do another show, I would definitely go out for another one.
Or take a European vacation and go check out Gary Newman.
I'll do that. Definitely. I was so distraught with what happened last night, though. I actually wrote Gary Newman's website before I went to bed. I went to bed and it was like going in my mind about everything, because the band noticed what was going on.
Yeah.
You could see that they fingered those guys.
Yeah.
And were giving them dirty looks.
Yeah.
And so
I every time that guy would bump me, I'd look over at security and be like, when are you gonna take care of this douchebag? Sure enough, once he was like getting at him, the one guy just like let loose. He was like, if I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna go out, and he just went crazy. Next thing you know, people in the audience were helping.
I was helping the security guards,
lifting him over the barricade. He went head first down.
Everybody applauded. But I was like, yeah.
It was weird. That was so weird.
Yeah.
I mean, and I remember being in mosh pits when I was young, and I'd get hurt, and I'd totally bounce back. I remember I got kicked in the head at like a Wonder Stuff show when I was like 17, and everything was fine. Now, a little shove, I'll feel it for months.
Signs of maturity.
Maturity, yeah.
All right, thanks for joining us. 2 hours of fracking. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks to our guests, and the podcast will be up soon. Peace.
È giunta mezzanotte, si spengono i rumori, si spegne anche l'insegna di quell'ultimo caffè. Le strade son deserte, deserte e silenziose, un'ultima carrozza cigolando se ne va. Il fiume scorre lento, frusciando sotto i ponti, la luna splende in cielo, dorme tutta la città. Solo va un vecchio fra, al cilindro per cappello 2 diamanti per gemelli, un bastone di cristallo, la gardenia nell'occhiello e sul candido gilet un papillon di seta blu. S'avvicina lentamente con incedere elegante all'aspetto trasognato, malinconico ed assente, non si sa da dove viene né dove va, di chi sarà quel vecchio fra. Bonne nuit, bonne nuit, bonne nuit, bonne nuit, buonanotte. Va dicendo ad ogni cosa ai fanali illuminati, ad un gatto innamorato che l'andagio se ne va. È giunta ormai l'aurora, si spengono i fanali, si sveglia a poco tutta quanta la città. La luna s'è incantata, sorpresa e impallidita, pian piano spolorandosi nel cielo sparirà. Sbadiglia una finestra sul fiume silenzioso e nella luce bianca galleggiando se ne va. Un cilindro, un fiore, un galleggiando dolcemente, lasciandosi cullare, se ne scende lentamente sotto i ponti verso il mare se ne va. Di chi sarà? Di chi sarà?